Upland Totems, they just got announced. Let's get right into this video here by X1. I've got another video on the channel breaking down what you need to know about the totems if you really don't know much. But this will also break down a few more. Quickly, this video does not cover everything. Again, I have another video on the channel if you want to go more in depth.
Here with the snapshot. On January 8th, between 9 and 10 a.m., we are going to take a snapshot of all map asset holders. This snapshot is going to determine the Totem that is initially dropped to you. So it's only going to be dropped to players that are Totem map asset holders. If you have the pass and you've not exchanged it, guess what? You won't be included in that snapshot and you won't receive your initial Totem allocation. So make sure you exchange that snapshot.
It is worth noting that if you have multiple totems, you will get additional Totem for each totem that you have. And this is only on the drop on the date he said, January 9th at 9 a.m. PT, 12 p.m. EST, whatever time zone you're in. You have to be holding a specific totem, not the pass, a totem, in order to get this Totem snapshot. And you will get more Totem for each totem you have.
Then the next day, we'll drop the Totem, and then the next day on January 9th, the cycles officially begin, and you can begin to feed your totems. Now, what happens if you miss the initial drop? Maybe you get totems after the fact. Maybe you didn't exchange your pass. Maybe we're a couple cycles in and you weren't able to get it. Well, we will have Totem sales. We will have sales of Totem in the store for totem owners during each cycle. Now,
it's funny that he messed up that Totem, it all sounds the exact same. And it's not even the real name of the token, which is stem. Totem, stem. You got tokens, whatever. It is, just gets kind of jumbled around. But yeah, you won't be able to buy more Totem if you own a totem. You can only buy Totem if you own a totem. So you will not be able to have access to Totem without a totem.
There will be a lot of Totem available there. We want to make sure that if you want to, you're able to purchase the Totem so you can experiment with your totems. And also, just if you miss the initial drop, you're able to participate. Fun fact here, if you're not a totem owner, you're not going to be able to buy Totem. If you are a totem owner, you're going to want to make sure you jump on that if you're not part of the initial drop, or if you just want more Totem to experiment. Again, this is going to exist every cycle. All right, let's talk about the activation and spending cycles here. Next part. Again, we're just going over the main talking points. We're not diving in deep. Make sure you go read the blog post to dive in deep. Activation deadline. So on January 9th, when your totems all become available to activate for the first time, there is a 5-day window to activate totems at the cycle start. If you activate on day 1, you then have 30 days it's a 30-day cycle for each totem. So if you activate on day 1, 30 days later, your cycle ends. If you activate on day 5, 30 days later, your cycle ends. If you miss the activation period, you cannot participate with your totem during that cycle. You miss out on the cycle.
Which is unfortunate, but guys, to give you 5 days, it shouldn't be too hard to activate your totem within those time frames. I mean, if you know you're going to be away, maybe try to plan around that, etc.
You gotta activate it within that 5-day window every single cycle. We are planning to hold at least 5 cycles with the totems. There may be more, but at least 5 cycles with the.
So what he means by this is, like I said earlier, stem is the real life token. So Totem won't actually be able to grow anything living. So this is all just a mini game to get stem. And so what he means when he says 5 cycles, so 5 times 30 more or less, 150 days worth of totem playtime, like half a year. They want a good amount of time to gather all the data, whatever. You know what, play. You will be able to exchange your Totem for stem in the future. So after this trial expires, there is not a useless point to this, right? All your Totem gets turned into stem, which is I don't know. I think stem will sort of work like Totem, where you can lose it and gain more, not like Spark, where it's a fixed number and then it can only increase more or less, whatever. And obviously until it hits exchanges, but that's a whole other video. Yeah, so the point of this is to get stem in the future. So whatever Totem you have left at the end of the trial will be turned into real stem, which is the actual token you want. Upland did this with Spark and Spud, if you are familiar with that.
So earning cycle, we went over all this already. It's a 30-day cycle with rewards based on your Totem spending strategy. The purpose of totems is to get Totem from them. So how do you get Totem from them? You feed your totem. This is how you activate your totem, by the way. You just feed it. From the NFT screen, you go in, you feed it. And then based on how frequently and how much you fed your totem, and remember, each totem is unique. So how to optimize it is going to be different. Some are going to require more frequent feedings. Some are going to require more amount of feeding in order to optimize that return. This is all about trial and error. It's all about optimizing each of your individual unique totems to maximize the amount of Totem that you're getting back. Again, the way that you activate it is by feeding it through the NFT screen, and then that kicks off your Totem. Now, let's talk about frequency models. There are 7 models that dictate the optimal feeding frequency, varying from 0 to 50 hours. Now, there are hints whenever you go to feed your totem. There will be hints here that say, hey, I'm feeding it too much. Hey, try feeding it less. Hey, you're doing it too frequently, etc., etc. So make sure that you pay attention.
And you're going to really want to pay attention to those hints. We have sort of a general baseline guide on what you should be doing more or less with each color, each style of totem, but yeah, you want to be paying attention to those hints. You'll have an optimization score as well, which is going to be super important to pay attention to, because you don't want to mess this up, because maximizing your totem will mean the most money for you when it gets exchanged for STEM.
There's a spending score there as well, that if it's in the green, you're doing it right. If it's in the red, you're not optimizing that. So the game here is to optimize your return on Totem. As far as output, this is something you're going to want to go over in detail. There are 11 different output curves representing all of the 11 life forms in Upland, and there's 6 archetypes for this. In other words, here's the earning pattern of my Totem. This is going to be trial and error. You're going to have to figure it out. Go read through this. So, for instance, a linear return is it slowly increases my return throughout the entire cycle. There are some that are steps, so like it remains steady, 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 and then we jump up a step, and all of a sudden I'm getting more return as I go along. Go through, read these archetypes of your output, learn them. This will determine how your returns are coming back to you, what it looks like, and it'll just help you figure out how to optimize your returns there. There are collection caps on totems, so your totem is going to earn Totem. And if let's say you let it go for a few days and you end up not collecting your Totem from it, you're going to have to go in and actually collect. If you don't do that, then gaining Totem for you. So you've got to make sure you're in and collecting as frequently as possible. Right now, since we're in this trial phase, during this first cycle, that cap is turned off, but we can turn it on at any time, and we will turn it on for future cycles. So you want to make sure that you're collecting your Totem from your totems as often as possible.
That's what I mentioned earlier. It's so easy to mess it up. Totem.
Next up, let's go through penalties for mismanagement. You're going to want to read through these variations here.
Again, I break this down in a different video. More or less, you can assume each variation. Variation 1 goes to hexagonal base, variation 4 goes to circle base, and the 2 in the middle, I mean, there's only 4, it's not too hard. And basically why this is Upland wants to assign value to more or less specific NFTs, and how they do this is making one better than the other. Circular base is going to be a lot better than square base, which is going to be better than pentagon base, which is better than hexagonal base. Why? Because of these variations and the penalties. So variation 1 will be applied to a hexagonal base totem. We can more or less skip this. You do not want variation 1. You do not want variation 1. I mean, even if you plan on never screwing up, it's still not wise to have this. I mean, even just the smallest mess up can drastically reduce the amount of totem you're going to yield off of this one totem. So I tried to ideally have every single one of my totems. I've got 5 all on pentagonal base or better. I mean, they're all are just pentagonal base. But I do think this is significantly better than variation 1. Variation 3 and 4 are obviously a lot better than this, but you can't get the absolute best for the cheapest, obviously. So we can skip that part really quick.
That's the game of Totem. And finally, just a reminder,
skipped a little bit too much.
There, make sure you go through all of these. Again, it's all trial and error. You're going to want to spend, pay attention to the hints, maximize your returns. That's the game of Totem. And
okay, yeah, so he skips that part pretty quickly. Overspending, obviously, don't try to overspend. You're going to start with an ideal amount. It's going to give you a hint, adjust. Underspending, if you spend less than the ideal amount, then you're actually going to get a small penalty. Penalty is calculated using a formula based on how much you actually underspent. This is why you don't want the hexagonal base, especially at the start, because it could screw you over for the entire month, and that is just not ideal. And then multiple spends in an interval, only the highest amount will be taken into account. No penalty, no penalty. Only underspending will yield a penalty, but we don't want these penalties. It says something about timing penalties. Each totem is unique, optimal spending interval, whatever. Don't worry about that. Penalties exist more or less just on underspending and if you miss feeding.
you're going to want to spend, pay attention to the hints, maximize your returns. That's the game of Totem. And finally, just a reminder here, totems are completely unique inside of Upland. You're going to want to make sure this is a game of experimentation. Every totem you own is going to be unique. It's going to require different spend amounts, different spend frequencies, and you're going to get rewarded with different returns for each of those. It's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a fun time to experiment, to see what it takes to maximize your totems. I'm very much looking forward to it. The gamer in me is looking forward to this. So there you have it. Again, this is just the basics. If you have any more questions, you can write into support. Make sure, though, again, we just briefly overviewed this. Make sure you review this post in details. Just tried to give you the top of line.
Yeah, and we haven't made a video going through this exact post. We made a video going through each totem trait and what they do for you, understanding your totems just a little bit better. This post is more or less the exact same thing. If you want us to break down this post, we will have another video on it. We hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.